I want to go to MSNBC, where Ilhan Omar's daughter is putting forth misinformation, including, this is a wild one, listen carefully, because she says it near the end. The reporter's just like lapping it up. The anchor's like listening to her with his mouth wide open and not challenging anything. And she's a student at Barnard. And she's all mad, by the way, because she's in trouble and she can't get into the dining hall. And I guess won't let her into the dormitory either. So she said she's homeless and she doesn't have anything to eat. But she's going on MSNBC and she makes a crazy allegation. She suggests that they're throwing chemical weapons on her. I mean, wow, right? All right, let's watch Ilhan Omar's daughter with the anchor on MSNBC that just can't get enough of this stuff. And let's see how this misinformation really gets spread.
Do other student groups have this kind of target on their back, or do you feel that you are being targeted because of the fact that it is in solidarity with Palestinians and against what Israel is doing to Palestinians?
Oh, this is 100% targeted. Every single protest that we have, there's a group of counter-protesters that bring all of their items, their flags and things like that, and they're not seen as having unsanctioned protests or really receive the kind of disciplinary warnings that many of our fellow organizers receive just for being seen at these protests. And so there is definitely some hypocrisy here, especially you can kind of see it with the students that were sprayed us with the chemical weapons, and the fact that there's no public information as to what happened to them, but rather the university is actively discussing what is happening to the students here and making it a whole public spectacle, rather than when we haven't done anything to physically harm students, whereas those that sprayed those chemical weapons physically harmed students.
Okay, maybe is she like convoluting something? Is she thinking about how chemical weapons have been used in the Middle East? Because it sounded like she was trying to tell us that she was sprayed with chemical weapons while protesting. And that's pretty crazy. And there was no clarification there from the anchor who seems to be very much on that side of things. Listen, this is getting out of control. It's out of control. They are now in a situation now where students have openly clashed with the police. It has turned violent. You have the one student at Yale University who wound up in the emergency room after having gotten something into her eye. And another student also complaining about a physical attack there at Yale University. I want you to hear from the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, who was just out moments ago saying, like, look, this is not something that we can tolerate.
We strongly believe that is the case right now, that there are people who are here, they latch on to any protest. To see our police officers having bottles thrown at them, chairs, people who peacefully protest for an issue, they're not throwing bottles and chairs. And so we know that we have acknowledged and saw across the country, there are people who come, have nothing to do with the issue, and they want to aggravate. What I believe is a number of people who are really trying to use this to cause violence in our city. And we're going to seek them out, and we're going to identify them. And I think Commissioner Daughtry made a good point. When I saw one of the interviews he did, why is everybody's tent the same? Was there a fire sale on those tents? There's some organizing going on. There's a concerted organizing effort. And what's the goal of that organizing? That's what we need to be asking ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, we got to be asking ourselves. In fact, I'm looking at your chat and I'm seeing that you guys are saying that. You're saying, like, how is this all sort of happening? Like, who's financing this? And I think that these are important questions to try and understand and ask, because someone is really trying to mess with us. And I have a feeling it's the same people that were behind Black Lives Matter and defund the police and a lot of the movements that were really tearing the country apart. Now, they get a very open audience there, right? All these kids in school that have been told, you can silence the other side because, if you don't agree with them, you silence them. And it's okay to use sometimes violent measures. I mean, it's wild. There was a study that came out maybe about 7 months ago that was looking at the views of kids on college campuses. And in some cases, you actually saw so many, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but a lot of them were perfectly fine with using aggression to shut down speech. And so it was sort of looking at how warped things have gotten. And interestingly, these Ivy League schools were the worst, like absolutely, positively the worst, because the wokeness virus has infected them in such massive, really significant ways. And I think you're seeing the upshot of that. I mean, administrators are kind of like, well, gosh, this isn't good. I mean, you want to tell me, the headline in the Wall Street Journal right now, they're shutting down classes at Columbia University. If you ask me, these protesters are winning when the university cannot actually manage this crisis. When things are that potentially violent, then the protesters are getting exactly what they want. I mean, there's only a few weeks of classes left. And so now you can't go to class on that main quad. I was looking, they're camped out outside the library. And the International Relations Building is right nearby. I mean, this is really, really terrible, terrible stuff. So if you can't actually have your classes now, then you're not managing this appropriately. And the woman who was originally born in Egypt, which, look, it's neither here nor there, but she didn't kind of get how serious this was initially. And so the administrators there have not taken the necessary course of action. Yes, they've come out and slammed the anti-Semitic talk, and they didn't do as bad a job as, say, Claudine Gay at Harvard University. But they're not doing a great job if you've got to shut down classes, for goodness sakes. If you've got the need for people to be Zooming in from home because they can't go to class because the protesters have taken over your campus, something's really, really wrong. And it almost just, it's like the chickens are coming home to roost. They allowed and encouraged this kind of hate. And I mean it, it's hate for the other side. And they encouraged them to shut down anyone who didn't agree. That's what wokeism is about. And so now they're like, well, why is this going on? Well, it's going on because you've taken a group of young people and you've corrupted their minds to such a state that now we're looking at you not being able to even hold your classes. How shameful. What do you pay for tuition there? It's like nearly $70,000 a year. I'm sorry. Who wants to go to these schools anymore? They got to get their act together. Maybe this will be a big wake-up call. Robert Kraft, who remembers New England Patriots, he's pulling his money. He's like, I'm out. You know what? I'm an alma mater of this school. I'm not giving a single dime anymore. We're waiting on Leon Cooperman, who's a big hedge fund guy, and Leon's a big deal investor, and he gives a lot of money to the school. And he's said in the past, these kids have T for brains. And Leon is right, all right? He hasn't pulled his money yet. He's trying to work with the administration, but he's got a lot of money to pull. And more people are going to say, I don't want to be associated with this. I don't want to hire a kid from one of these places because there's some kind of radical. And so this is becoming seriously a major problem. And these protests are erupting in really, really unhealthy ways. So Donald Trump is absolutely right. Can we play the short clip of him, Drew, that we played at the top of the show, saying that this is just a disgrace, that Biden doesn't know who the heck to back?
What's going on is a disgrace. Now, it's interesting outside for great Americans, people that want to come down and they want to protest at the court, and they want to protest peacefully. We have more police presence here than anyone's ever seen. For blocks, you can't get near this courthouse. And yet you have nobody up at a college where you have very radical people wanting to rip the colleges down, the universities down. And that's a shame. But it all starts with Joe Biden. The signals he puts out are so bad. And I can tell you, he's no friend of Israel, that's for sure. And he's no...
He's making some really good points. And listen, you have to be strong on these things. It's what the administrators need to do at the schools. And it's what Joe Biden needs to do as president of the United States. Remember, he was strong initially? And then he vacillated because, there's a chorus of people on the extreme left that got really angry about it. And so somehow there's oxygen there. Rashida Tlaib, remember when she got everybody all riled up and they marched to Capitol Hill? I don't see Rashida Tlaib being tried for interrupting a federal sort of situation. I mean, just like the guy, what's his name? Bowman, who pulled the fire alarm. Justice Neil Gorsuch brought that up the other day when he was like, how do we distinguish here? When you want to talk about somebody interfering with a federal proceeding, I mean, that's happened, right? It's happened. Anyway, they've encouraged this kind of radicalism to the extent now where it's happening all over the country in these schools. And I don't think they're going to be able to deal with it the way they want.